Stories influence, teach, and inspire us. But what about the storytellers who create them? Uncorking a Story profiles storytellers to uncover how their background and life experiences influence the stories they create. We learn what motivates them, their path to success, and what fuels them to keep creating. It all starts by asking one simple question: where does your story begin? Welcome to Uncorking a Story. Now here's your host, Mike Carlin.
Hello and welcome to Uncorking a Story. I'm your host, Mike Carlin, and today my guest is Shaun Phillips, a Christian author, speaker, coach, and pioneer. Shaun's first book is Flappy and Whiskers Go to the Park, which was published back in August of 2021, 10 years after writing it for his two young daughters. And through the experience of getting that book published, Shaun has uncovered a passion for helping others unlock their untold stories and share them with the world through books, videos, podcasts, and live performances. Welcome to Uncorking a Story, Shaun.
Hi, Mike. Great to be here.
Well, great to have you here, Shaun. I'm going to ask you the same question I ask everybody who sits. I almost said sits in that seat, but it looks like you're standing. Shaun, where does your story begin?
I'm sitting. Yeah, I'm sitting.
Okay. Where does your story begin, Shaun?
I can see you asked that question. It's a really good one, and I think for me, I can't actually really remember my parents reading me stories, but actually, of course, I'm sure they did read me stories when I was young, because that's, I think, where it comes from. I'm actually reading stories, and my nephew was like the first of my parents' grandchildren. When he was found 5, I used to read stories, so probably even when he was younger, and I used to really enjoy it. And I started finding myself doing the voices, and that was something that I was really keen on when I had my own children. I thought, I'd love to be able to read them stories. And I've actually got a book here, we've got the Winnie the Pooh, like the whole sort of the whole lot of the Winnie the Pooh stories. And I read all of them to my eldest daughter, who's now 17, when she was a baby. So she won't even remember. But, it's one of those things I have that passion for. And I think that's really what's taken me on this journey, is wanting to not just share the stories, but perform them, to actually help people to enjoy the storytelling aspect as well as the actual story itself.
Yeah, you say, your daughter may not remember, but I've had so many people who I've interviewed tell me, when I ask them, hey, where does your story begin? Sometimes people say, you know what, I just remember, my grandmother or whoever kind of reading to me when I was young to put me to bed. Now, do they remember when they were babies? I don't know, but there's something I think that gets lodged in our sort of subconscious about the stories we were told when we were younger. So you never know. She might remember all those Winnie the Pooh stories with Christopher Robin and Tigger and Eeyore.
Yeah, well, definitely. Well, actually, it's just you say that, because there was one occasion where they'd gone past the age of wanting me to read them stories, and randomly one evening they said, "Oh, Daddy, could you read us some Winnie the Pooh?" So it was something we did carry on as well reading, but it was just interesting that randomly they were like, "Oh yeah, we want to hear a story," which was actually a really nice thing, because you go for that phase as a parent where you get to enjoy reading stories to your children, and then they get to the point they want to read the stories to you, and then they're off to reading their own thing.
Yeah. I remember when we have triplets. They just turned 20 back in April. And I remember, nighttime rituals was always me reading stories to 2 of them. One of them had no interest and just wanted me to, just kiss her goodnight. The other 2, my son wanted stories all night long. He just wanted to hear his favorites. And then my daughter always wanted me to make up stories. Like, she always wanted me. She's like, I don't want anything that, I've heard before. Just make up a story. So I'd tell her stories, that she thought were true stories. And then she was very disappointed when she realized that I made them all up. But yeah, it's interesting, those nighttime rituals. But that's cute that they wanted, you wanted you to kind of take a walk down memory lane with that Winnie the Pooh.
Yeah, well, actually, and then it's interesting as well. You kind of, you sort of went on something else about the making up of stories, and actually, there is a future Flappy and Whiskers story where, when they were younger, we took turns in making something up. I haven't quite put it all together yet, because some of it is a little bizarre, because it was, I think one of them was about 2 at the time, but I'd sort of make up a bit, then the older one would make up a bit, and the younger one would make up a bit, and then so I recorded saying it, and then transcribed it. So there will in the future be some elements of a story that actually we collaborated on, just from even when they were from a young age.
Oh, that's really cool. It's almost like an improvisation at that point, right? Where it's like an
Yeah.
improv game almost. Yeah, that's great. That's great. Well, tell me the backstory on Flappy and Whiskers Go to the Park, and it sounds like there was a 10-year sort of gap between writing it and then having it published. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Well, yeah. So I did some NLP, which is neuro linguistic programming. I did some courses, yeah, around sort of 2009, 2010, and um, a lot of what was in there was actually the use of using language to for teaching, for education. So educating children on um, sharing and good values and friendship. And so I really had this heart for actually wanting to be able to go, how do I help my children? Can I actually come up with some stories that actually are not really overtly teaching them about something, but it's something they can read and enjoy, but it's also actually it is teaching them, but it's done in a fun way. So that's the how Flappy and Whiskers, this sort of idea initially came about, and I did some really very bad illustrations myself. I tried myself, and they weren't particularly good, but yeah, then I started developing the story, and the idea was that I would get it published for them at Christmas. And so that Christmas, I thought I'll get it in a book, and unfortunately, things didn't work out that way. Myself and my wife at the time, we split up, and so yeah, my life changed at that point, and so kind of Flappy and Whiskers kind of fell by the wayside. It wasn't. It became from being something that was obviously sort of a high priority to a lower priority, and something I suppose really I'd lost confidence with, and I'd sort of buried it, and I thought, well, actually, it was maybe something I might do in the future, but there was no real kind of desire or even kind of confidence that I could do that. And then sort of and then winding it on sort of 10 years, I was involved in this came across this group called Life on Fire, which it's an entrepreneur for Christian entrepreneurs, and I went through this course. And outside of that, there's this authors group that popped up, just a group of authors that were doing the course, and were like, "Oh, hey, we'll get together and we'll have a little messenger group in Facebook." And and then I felt God nudge me and go, "Oh, you should share the video." I did a video back in 2010 of Flappy and Whiskers, me reading it, and I posted it on YouTube and Facebook, and I got some good feedback. So then those guys were saying, "Yeah, post that video from 10 years ago." It's like, oh, why would I do that? I'm not sure if I want to do that. So I didn't do anything about it. And then probably maybe a few days or a week later, I felt a little nudge again to share it. And I thought, okay, fine. So I shared it on there, and I got some great feedback. And actually, somebody said to me, "Oh yeah, all you need to do is get it illustrated and formatted, and off you go." And it was kind of like a little switch went off in my head that somebody'd kind of almost given me permission to say, "Hey," or in that encouragement to say, "You can do this." And so that was the sort of journey of going, right, okay, I'm going to go and I'm going to do that and actually get some proper illustrations and something that people would actually enjoy.
So how did you go about finding your illustrator? Did you contract with a publishing company first? Did you have an agent, or did you do this kind of pretty much all on your own?
Yeah, pretty much all on my own. So I mean, I've got different friends that have taken different journeys in their publishing, and but I like to learn. I'm a very practical learner, so I like to do things and say, well, if I can sort of take, or not necessarily the hardest route, but certainly the route that's going to take the most amount of work, not deliberately, but in this case, I wanted to learn what is this self-publishing about because I knew people that had actually done it. So my first point with the illustrations was I was going to a website called Upwork.com,
Sure.
which I've used through my career in doing various all sorts of different freelancers for different types of work. And so that was the first place to go. And actually, I was looking for a particular illustrator because I'd seen a book of hers that I really loved, but she wasn't available at the time. But I found this Russian lady, Eleanor, and she was her very first time doing anything on it. So I was like, this is amazing. I can actually support somebody that's starting from scratch, and I like the work she's doing, and what she did was it was quite raw and authentic, and actually I really enjoyed the way she did it. So yeah, that was the way. And I guess one thing I would say is that I'm making it sound easy, and it is not. It as is generally quite easy to get someone, but I think there's generally some work to be done, obviously, in actually making sure you find the right person. because there'll be plenty of people on there. But what's great about the site is it does give you ratings and things as well for people. But that was my first, my first sort of start was getting it all illustrated.
Yeah, so you had this sort of this voice, this calling saying, "Hey, it's time, do this." And then you ignore it. And
Yeah.
then, that voice doesn't go away. There's a persistence there. And then you put everything into motion. How important was it for you to get the encouragement of other people after you started sharing that video? Just tell me about the role encouragement played there.
Oh, I think it was huge. I think, one of the things that I realized in this whole journey was actually that I never believed I could write anything. So prior I think that's one of the reasons why I was knocked off course, back in 2010. Obviously, other things were going on around that time, but it's also the fact that I think I didn't really believe that I could. And so, but to be in a group of authors that say to me, "You can do it," I was like, these are people that are, they've written books, and they're saying to me, "You've got a story. This is a good story. You can share this. People would want to hear this." Then, yeah, it was huge. I mean, I think, I think there's two aspects of that for me. One is the sharing of it in the first place, because that can be a scary thing. It can be a challenge. You got to share it, what they're going to say, and that was kind of what's holding me back as well. But actually, by sharing it, then I got the feedback, and yeah, it was a massive driver. I mean, it really got me to believe I could do this, and I was from that point on, I was just like headlong into, I'm going to get this done. I'm going to get this and get it done. And as I progressed, it also meant I rang a group of people that when I got stuck, if I didn't know about a particular thing, I go back to them and say, how do I do this? How do I do that? So having the community of knowing that people were going to encourage me and support me was huge.
Yeah, I mean, there's just two things to pick up on there. I mean, number one, being vulnerability, because you do make yourself vulnerable when you share anything. I mean, especially creatively, but putting your book in front of people who don't know you, it takes a fair amount of courage, because you don't know what the feedback's going to be. Nobody asked you to write this book. So you do have to make yourself vulnerable there, but also, and this is a theme that comes up with a lot of authors I talk to, both independently published authors as well as, people who have big names. It's this imposter syndrome. They feel like, why would somebody read something that I did? I'm no good. This is really not who I am. I never thought that this would be my career path. But over time, I think you chip away at that when you have the encouragement of other people, when you have that community around you. It's so incredibly important. I mean, really for authors to have encouragement and community.
Oh yeah, 100%. I think actually it's really interesting what you said about that. It happens to people. I was talking about somebody the other day was talking about speaking, and they were saying that every single time they've done maybe 1,000 times, they've done it every single time. There's that shred of doubt. There's that little bit of doubt that creeps in, and actually they're saying it's not about that is ever going to go away. But actually, as you say, having a community around you, having that support of others that encourage you, having people that actually have already responded and said that, oh yeah, actually I'm really enjoying reading. When is your next thing going to be? And yeah, it is a challenge. It's a challenge to be vulnerable, to be open to people, and I think there's an important factor about how you choose that. I think with social media these days, I think if you're really able to, then sharing it widely is great. However, I would definitely say to people, start with the people that do actually are going to want to encourage you, and actually build it up from there. Because like you say, it can be a vulnerable thing, but you put it out there widely, and then somebody gives you a negative comment, or but I would definitely start off with those that, and in that particular group, having seen the posts people are making, you could already see that it was an encouraging group. So you knew that people weren't going to just, they would definitely give you advice. But also, you obviously want the critical aspect as well. If there's something you do need to sort out, I mean, the Flappy and Whiskers, even though it's only a short story, but actually the amount of editing I ended up doing between the original recording in 2010 to the version that was published was quite a lot, and surprisingly so. And so I think there was definitely work to be done. So as that encouragement, it wasn't ready. It wasn't perfect, but it was the start of the journey.
Yeah. So it sounds like, having gone through this journey yourself, you're now, looking to help, other people, kind of express their untold stories, as your bio put it. Tell me a little bit more about that. Are you a coach for other people? Just tell me a little bit more about how you're helping people sort of get the word out about their work.
Well, yeah. So I think I mentioned that I'd actually might have been part of my kind of journey is back in 2010. I was coaching people, and it's actually something that I'd kind of put a little bit on the side, went back to the full time job, and it's been over the last few years that's come back to the forefront again of realizing actually, yeah, whenever I find myself in a situation where I've taken a journey, then it becomes something that I want to help other people with. And this particular journey of really, for me, it's about helping people to believe they're good enough. And I think that is the really the key turning point is once people can understand. So that's really what I look to do is to help people that first step is to, well, not the first step, but like the actual goal is for them to go, right, I'm actually good enough to do this, because the rest of it, there's plenty of materials, there's plenty of people that can support people in actually going through the actual technical aspects, whether it is going to a publisher, whether it is doing self-publishing, but it's the mindset, it's getting to that point where you're saying, actually, I can overcome that. So what I like to do with people is just take them through that journey, which is, as I said, about sharing it, is actually about making sure that you're in part of a community, which I call bridging the gap. So to take you from the point of saying, well, actually, I'm ready to do this now. I've shared it. I've got the encouragement, but I don't want to fall into the pit that everybody else falls into. So actually, I work with people that can help me to, bridge the gap, create a bridge that I can go over to the other side, follow the journey they've taken, because we don't need to reinvent everything ourselves. We can, we can actually we can actually take the path other people have taken, and therefore learn from their mistakes rather than fall in the same problems they did.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like so you came back to coaching after a while. What was your day job? Like, how were you earning a living?
Oh well, well, IT. So I did IT for many years, and then moved into e-commerce. So building websites, doing graphics and videos. So it's one of the things I do quite enjoy. I enjoy doing my videos on YouTube and and podcasts. So I love the technology. So that's the thing that really gets me excited about things, and that's something else that I sort of I talk to people about as well is the fear of technology, because it's another thing. It's another common thing, and it does tie in with the not being good enough, because ultimately, I mean, it does feel it does obviously feel like to a lot of people like it's a lot, and it is ever changing. And but the great thing about a lot of it is, again, it comes back to the mindset. It comes back to actually, it may not, you're never going to be the expert. You're never going to be, nobody can ever. I've been doing IT for 25 years, and I'm not an expert. I mean, I'm pretty good, and I've been doing a lot of areas, and I can do a lot of things. But in a few weeks' time, a new version of something's come out, or or a new technology's come out, and there's a whole nother level to learn. So I think it's kind of breaking it into smaller chunks. That's what I feel like helps the people. It's that if we've got a wall in front of us that we want to get over, it's actually kind of how do we build the steps up to get over it, rather than trying to leap over the wall in one, pole vault over in one go. So I think that's what I find helps people, is to, let's break it down. What's the first thing we can do to get you on the next part of the journey?
Yeah. So did it ever cross your mind, or when did it cross your mind that, hey, maybe I could make a living helping other people? In addition to supporting yourself, I always call it the day job, because so many authors, I mean, all have day jobs too, right? It's very few can actually fully make a living as an author. Did you ever see this as your career path at all? Like when you were younger, like in high school or college, like did you ever, think that this could be the path you'd wind up on?
No, not really. No, I mean, I always loved gadgets and IT, so I thought I'd have a gadget shop. That was always my kind of, I remember, thing when I was a teenager. Right, I'm going to have a shop. So I was always interested in the whole selling in a shop, and then when I got into websites, selling on a website, that type of thing. But no, not. I mean, the writing aspect, not at all. So that to me is almost a little joke. feel like it's a little joke to me. It's like, oh yeah, actually, to be helping other people in taking a journey writing to me is just completely off the wall. I think coaching wise, when I was younger, when I was a teenager, I did have people say to me, "You've got an old head on young shoulders," which is 17. I thought was a bit of an insult, but I realized as I got older, I was like, "Oh, actually, I see what you're saying." People would come to me and just tell me their life stories, and so I realized there was definitely something going on where people were feeling comfortable with, and actually somehow, I was able to use my own life experience. So yeah, they did take a journey in doing that, and actually the journey of going into coaching just happened because I was working with somebody in on the IT company I was working for, and he was a new snow guy. He just joined, and I was like, oh, I'll be nice to the new guy, and I go and ask him a question or two, just. And I said to him, oh, and I'd heard somebody say it helps people give up smoking. Now I never smoked, but I go and ask him about it, and then he was the one that was talking to me about NLP and how he was running this course in a few months, and so it all kind of stemmed from that really, and it wasn't something that I'd even really thought of before. But I think once you start working with people, and once you see the results, then yeah, it's just such an amazing feeling to see that you've been part of helping somebody on a journey, helping equip them to the next step, because you don't know what they're going to do and who they're going to help, and so it's you can give so little, and yet so much could come out of it.
Yeah, I remember I went through a big NLP phase back in like the late 90s, early 2000s. One of my, my primary job is I run, market research focus groups all over the US. And so much of NLP, or a lot of NLP, is understanding how to build rapport with people. And typically by doing it through, visual actions, but also, of course, through language. So I was really trying to really, become a better interviewer, become a better moderator. So I started reading a lot of the early books on NLP. And I remember like Tony Robbins back in the day was really big into NLP. I mean, some of his first couple of books, I want to say, were all about, the principles of NLP, but then, how to apply them to business, into selling and stuff like that. But I find it to be fascinating, just the way we can string different words together to different people to try and get, some kind of desired reaction. I know I'm really watering it down by saying it that way, but it is fascinating to me.
Oh, it is. Well, it's amazing. It's actually, I mean, well, yeah, I mean, Tony Robbins is a great example of somebody that uses it to massive effect. I mean, a lot of people that you'll see that can engage an audience of thousands, tens of thousands in one room is because, like you say, they're building rapport, they're doing that in the things they're doing. They're getting people to engage with them in interactive activities, and it's actually, it is, it's actually quite amazing and quite a powerful thing.
Yeah. Well, I do have some fun questions for us. Again, these are all to try and get to know my guests as the people they are. And one way to do that is asking about pop culture. So I'm curious, Shaun, when you were younger, what were some of your favorite TV shows? Think about your childhood, favorite TV shows, if you have any.
I've got lots of that's one of those questions, isn't it? Like, which one do you pick? But I think
it doesn't have to be your favorite. Maybe just a couple of your favorites.
Well, I think I used to I used to love things like Happy Days. Some of those kind of those shows like that, and some of the it's probably one of my favorites.
Yeah,
Happy Day and the Fonz and
the Fonz. Nothing better and nothing cooler than the Fonz. I love Henry Winkler. Even to this day, he's great on this this new show, not new show, but the recent show Barry on HBO. Very dark comedy, but he's fantastic in it. But I remember as a kid, I had a picture of the Fonz over my bed. I probably shouldn't admit that, but I just thought he was like the coolest thing on two legs, the whole jacket. I didn't even know what a greaser was, or I didn't really understand the cultural context. I just thought he was this cool guy.
Yeah, totally. I think I always wanted the leather jacket, and I think, but I think other shows. I mean, I loved like things like Knight Rider and the ATeam. I actually probably a couple of years ago I watched the whole of the ATeam again, and I really enjoyed it. I was one of
really?
I thought oh, it's going to be so dated, and yeah, it was a bit, but actually it was still really enjoyable.
The one thing about the A-Team is, first of all, they always get away, which I think is amazing. But they always break Murdoch out of a mental hospital, which I don't know how like the staff doesn't really improve the security measures because they're always able to get him out. But the big question is, B.A. Baracus, he always falls for the milk, the milk, the drug in the milk, to get him on the plane because he's always like, I ain't going on no plane. How does he fall for it every episode? I don't know. But it's a great show.
Yeah. Well, he falls for it, and then he's like, okay, he sort of gets a bit angry about it, and he's like, oh, okay, well, I'll forgive you guys until the next time.
The one I'd add to that wonderful list of TV shows. Did you ever see The Greatest American Hero?
No.
It was on around the same time. It like premiered, right when Knight Rider and but it was about this guy who finds a like aliens come down and they give him like a Superman suit basically. But he loses the instruction manual, so he doesn't know how to like use everything in the suit. And every episode is just one like mistake after another. But that, I had to ask because I remember they debuted like around the same time.
Yeah. I think it's one of the downsides. Well, I mean, it's amazing actually. These days you can get almost every show from anywhere. But obviously, but back then we didn't always get all of the shows. The other one actually that I really loved as well was MacGyver. Again,
MacGyver's so good.
I mean, it's very similar to the A-Team, isn't it? There was always enough stuff for him to make what he needed to make. So
there was an episode of MacGyver where, and if I'm remembering this correctly, he finds the Holy Grail. He finds the Holy Grail, and the key to finding the Holy Grail is playing Ring Around the Rosie. Just that episode will forever stand out in my mind of MacGyver, but it's a wonderful show. All right, moving on from TV. How about this? Artists on your playlists. Who do you listen to? Who are some of your favorite musical artists?
Oh, well, it sort of changed over the years. When I became Christian, I listened to a lot of worship songs. So I do like a lot of Matt Redman. He's actually from Watford. So I was actually at his church, the church that he sort of started out on that his journey just a few weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
And also, growing up, Guns N' Roses. I was a big Bon Jovi fan.
Opposite side of the spectrum there. Sure.
Yeah. So I like lots of different music, but I think I do like the rock. I mean, I grew up on a lot of Elvis. My dad used to play Elvis, Beatles. So I do love some Elvis and Beatles as well.
Or you can combine the Christianity and the hard rock and listen to Stryper. I mean, that would be valid.
Yeah, well, there's a band called Theocracy. A friend of mine, they're like really heavy metal.
Yeah, I remember. Go ahead.
I was gonna say there was used to have a ringtone on my phone for years of this guitar solo, and I didn't, I was like, oh yeah, it's guitar. So I just liked it as a ringtone. It wasn't so later on I became a Christian. Then I was listening to some of the music, and then I heard this guitar solo, which is by Petra, which Christian band, and I didn't know. So that was like, oh, these years I've listened to this guitar solo. So
yeah, you mentioned a couple times sort of converting to Christianity, becoming a Christian. Would you mind sharing your conversion story? Like, when did this happen, and how did it happen?
Okay, yeah, I'll try and summarize it. It's quite like there's a lot of elements to it, but basically, so I mean, I grew up. So I was about 6 or 7. We used to go to church, and then we stopped going to church. So I had, I used to go to summer school. So there was kind of an element of I knew about God, and then I became a teenager, and as a teenager, I still prayed for a bit more as a teenager, but God wasn't answering the questions about meeting girls and this sort of thing. So I kind of, so that for me was kind of it, really. It was like, there may be a God out there, but that was it. And then then kind of come forward to 2010, a lot of things happened in 2010, 2011, and I ended up being in a play. So this is another kind of sort of random thing in my life. For my first time in life as an adult, I was in a play called The Southwark Mysteries, which was about Jesus, and then I came out of that and ended up in a musical, Jesus Christ Superstar, a local musical, and then I was in a choir in a church, and Um, but then all of these, they're not all those things were happening. But then the split with my ex-wife happened. So kind of that. So it was almost like a point at which maybe I was getting closer to that. But then I was off again. And then in 2016, a friend of mine invited me up to Edinburgh Fringe. So she lived in Aberdeen, so I went to Aberdeen. We drove up there, and we went to one church. And I was like, okay. And then she was like, oh, I want to go to church this evening as well. I was like, okay, I'll choose a church. And so I chose this church called Destiny. And then we went to this church, and I was just sort of, she'd been talking to me about Jesus, and I was kind of like, okay. And when I got there, I don't know, something was happening. I just, as I was approaching the church, I was like, oh, this is, I actually sort of skipped over a bit. I'll just jump back a little bit. So 2013, a friend took me to a local church, a vineyard church. And and I was sitting there, and I was sitting it's quite a big church. I was sitting quite far back. And then the preacher was talking something about, and he said, there's somebody here that, that needs to know that Jesus loves him. And he looked straight at me. And I was really far back, and I was like, how did he look straight at me? And so I just noticed my power is. Yes. So so he looked straight at me, and that just really kind of freaked me out, and I just burst into tears. I was just like really, really. I suppose I was a bit scared. I didn't know what was going on. I was really upset. I was emotional. I didn't know what was going on with me. And then I went out the auditorium, and somebody actually sat me down and had a chat with me, and it's like, oh, and prayed for me. And so so at that point I was like, oh, maybe, I was kind of considering what it would be like to get close to God again. But again, it didn't happen. And I mentioned that particular bit because in 2016, when I was walking to this church, I started getting nervous that it was going to happen again. So I was like, oh no, I feel like I've got this feeling that this thing's going to happen again. That happened before. And so we got into the church, and we sat a couple of rows from the front, and I sat down, and then the pastor Sammy said, oh, I've got this image. And I thought, oh no, it's going to say something. It's going to resonate. It's going to hit me. And I'm like, oh no. And I was getting quite stressed. And then he said, oh, I've got this picture of a flower. And I was like, oh. So I just relaxed. I was like, oh, it's going to be had nothing to do with me. It's a flower. And then he said, oh, and he goes, oh yeah, it's like somebody's pulling the flower. Says, does he love me? Does he love me not? And that was it. That was it. Hit me. And,
the floodgates open.
Yeah, I knew. Yeah, and I was sobbing, and it was, for me, it felt like God was reaching His hand inside my chest, pulling out all the pain, and then filling it with love. And I knew it was God because it happened before. I was like, yeah, this time, the first time I know what's going on. This time I was like, okay, God is here, and things are happening. So that was kind of the start of it for me. And that was 6 years ago now. So I kind of it feels like still feels quite fresh, but it's still sort of it's been a journey since then.
I mean, definitely a similarity to getting the book published, because you were receiving a message saying, hey, now it's time to do something with this and to share it, and you ignore it a bit, and then the persistence doesn't stop. So there's a theme of persistence that I'm picking up on here. But thank you for sharing that story. Back to my list of silly questions. This one's actually not so silly. What lesson about publishing do you feel like you learned the hard way? Kind of going through the publishing process with the first book. What did you think you learned the hard way?
Well, I mentioned about the editing. So I think I underestimated the editing. So I think I pretty much did it with myself and a few other friends, and I think I would definitely would want to engage an editor the next time. But the other thing is the marketing, the actual having a plan. So I didn't have a plan. I'd like, right, I've got it. I'm going to go and get this straight. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to get it published. And I did all these things, and then I realized that there's this element of successfully getting actually good sales. Then you really should be having a plan that it's about 2 months in advance of your publishing date. But that was the time that I took to actually get the book done. So there was an element where I should have spent some time actually formulating a plan so before actually the publication of it. So that was something that I was quite a difficult. I think it was difficult to sort of throw myself in there, get it all done, and not get as many sales initially as I was kind of hoping to get. I mean, actually, I did crowdfund it as well, so I used Kickstarter, um, which was really good. So I did do some marketing. That was my marketing machine, but I realised that there was more to have done. So I think definitely the thing I found the hardest was actually that I skipped a step, which
Yeah.
kind of and that's one of the things that I feel like I want to be able to help people with, is to help them take the steps in the right sequence, because it just makes life harder when you're trying to then build your sales up from that point. You can still do that, but you've missed what is, there's a window that you get with Amazon where you can hit that bestseller, even if it's only a brief period of time, with if you get your sales within a certain period of time. And so actually, yeah, that was one of the things. But now, no, afterwards. So that's, it's all good lessons, because I'm not, this is an ongoing journey. There's going to be more Flappy and Whiskers, and
Yeah.
with my wife, we're gonna be doing a relationship book. So we've got something else that we're going to come up with as well. So that's what's been amazing, actually. That, as we spoke about, that not only this one book, but and that's what I hope for other people, is not just to help them overcome it so they write a book, but actually become, they're able to then open up other areas, other things that they can do. So now, I mean, I could never expected to have written one book, let alone have, probably 10, 15, 20,
Yeah.
20 or more ideas of things that I want to do in that area.
Well, I mean, there is a sharp learning curve, but once you learn all these lessons, and so many of them you do learn the hard way, especially when you're doing everything yourself. It'd be a shame to waste them and not either share them with others or apply them to your future work, which it sounds like you're doing. Last up, if you could write your younger self a letter, the younger Shaun Phillips. Pick an age, maybe pick an age where you were feeling, like you were questioning life or uncertain about things. What words would Shaun Phillips today, share with the younger Shaun?
Um, well, I think you mentioned that persistence, but I think I would say it's sort of around that theme. But I'd talk to myself about perseverance. I would say stick out the things that you love to do. I feel like at that age, I think I gave up on a lot of things quite easily. Um, and I'm naturally interested in lots of things, so that I'm aware of that now, being older. But certainly, I'd say to my younger self, you've got plenty of time, so stick at the things a bit longer, particularly a guitar. So I mean, I've since becoming a Christian, I've been on worship bands, so I've had more of a reason, a focus to learn to improve my guitar. But I've been doing that for a long time, on and off. And so certainly that would be one area I'd say, right, stick at the guitar, stick at the dancing lessons, stick at the, whatever it is that I'm kind of looking at. My younger brother was very good. He's quite sporty, and he was very good at, right, okay, he was going to learn to do pogo stick, and he would just be doing it relentlessly until he was really good. Wherever it was, roller skating, right, I'm going to do it relentlessly. I'm going to fall over. I'm going to get up, and and actually, yeah, I'd say to myself, yeah, stick at the things that you love doing, and even when it's tough, because you do get those times. Anything you learn, you're going to plateau. You're going to get times when you're like, oh, I'm not making as much progress, but you'll get there in the end.
Yeah. So, Shaun, if there's someone out there listening to this who wants to get in touch with you, do you have a website, social media that you want to share with everybody?
Yeah, I mean, you can find me on social media, Shaun Unlocking. So that's SHAUN Unlocking. And also on my website, which is shaunphillips.co.
Okay, very good. And where can people buy the first Flappy and Whiskers book?
Well, it's on Amazon. So whichever country and you go onto Amazon, you can buy Flappy and Whiskers from there. And it's available in many books shops as well. But certainly Amazon is an easy way to do it. And on the subject of the website, I do have a video on there as well. So there is a free webinar about being good enough. So actually helping people to overcome and be what I could be a fearless author. And that's somebody goes to the website. There's a link on there they can sign up and get that free webinar, which I hope will bless some people as well.
Very good. Well, Shaun, thank you so much for stopping by, uncorking a story, and then letting me uncork your story.
Yeah, it's been really brilliant. I've actually really enjoyed it. Thank you for having me on.
Thanks for listening to Uncorking a Story. If you'd like more information about today's guest or to find out more about Mike, go to uncorkingastory.com. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, rate, and review us at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Tune in every week to hear Mike Carlin uncork a new story.